Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reviews, where today we're going to be checking out some tracks from a game named Age of Empires. And if we switch over to here, we're on Music B, we've got the art here. I'll zoom in on this part so you guys can see the art clearly. This is the biggest that we could find the art for this. We're going to be checking out three tracks today. It's the music from the Castle Age for the Japanese and Age of Empires 4, as well as the Imperial Age. As this area, these are the favorite themes, the favorite songs in the game for JIS 342, who has kindly asked me to review this stuff. And I enjoy Age of Empires as a game, like genuinely. Like, I've played it before. I haven't played 4, but I'm a massive fan of 2. Could kind of got into 3 a little bit. I think I got the first game in like a cereal packet when I was a youngin'. I might check out 4 when it's on sale a bit later on, but you know, definitely I can appreciate the effort that they put into the music in these games is spectacular. I'm excited. I got a little bit of a fright because Music B is telling me that these tracks are 38 and 36 minutes, but they're not. They're not actually, I don't think. I think they're actually like shorter than that. Yeah, they're like 5 minutes 30. And then the last one, called the Chrysanthemum, is like a culmination of the different types of music, I think, in the different stages of the Japan themes. So it'd be good to hear through that too. We're going to listen through each of these tracks from start till finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go, starting with Castle Age Combat for the Japanese. And instantly you got that low end coming through from the orchestral elements there with the woodwind, that flute there. As I understand it, traditional Japanese instruments there. Not necessarily sticking to a meter or a time signature. Like it's 4/4 at the moment, but I think there's some flexibility there. See, there's breaks and intensities. There's this legato notes in these quieter sections, but we still have a lot of energy from different instruments intersecting each other, almost like they are battling with each other. Is there like shamisen and stuff like that in here? Wouldn't be surprised if there were taiko drums as well for the percussion. No. You can hear how the rhythm changes to da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-dun, that different phrasing of those notes, even though we're sticking with the same tempo and the same time signature, it does make it still sound rhythmically distinct. It creates a point of tension because you're like, why are we doing this right now? And it just makes the composition more into the journey more. It sounds like we've gone to a new destination. Wonderful low into those percussive hits as well. One thing I want to do when I go to Japan at some stage is I want to get a traditional Japanese instrument. I think one of those little flutes, the flute to be dope. I do have a passion for woodwinds. I do play a couple of different types myself. They have wonderful tones to them. They're very eerie sounding, you know. I mean, it's predominantly strings though, isn't it? Aside from the plucked leads and the woodwinds. Nah, fantastic, superb, really well rounded. Like, if I'm honest, went straight into it. What I really appreciate about this car, because that's the combat theme for the Castle Age there. It reminds me a lot of music I've heard from games like Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima, you know, video games that try and capture the essence of the culture of that time, but also the drama of the big battles that they have in those games. I think there is an art to the way that they use the pan flutes and the shamisen and the plucked parts, as well as the taiko drums, which is this kind of almost tribal, incredibly intense force behind those hits with both the dum-dums and the clacks on the side of the drums. I've actually played taiko drums. I might even be getting to have a go on them at some point, like real ones. But I think that there's something really satisfying for me to listen to what they're trying to accomplish with the atmosphere of this and just how eloquently it flows for 5 minutes. Like, you can simultaneously imagine that this track could serve quite well as like a background music, if that makes sense, because there's no real dominant lead elements there. I've been very careful to have quite a lot going on a lot of the time, but in a way that doesn't give too much kind of voice to something. You have chants from males in there very, very occasionally, just for add a bit of humanity to it. Almost like you can hear the soldiers getting ready for battle or something like that. But you also get the feeling that they're trying to incorporate the Japanese aesthetic with a lot of the instruments that they use around that time. I know there's lots of others, but at least a couple of the main ones, whilst also trying to fit it into the way that the actual game itself, Age of Empires, sounds overall. And I think they managed to cover that quite well. The recording quality performance is incredible. The songwriting is effortless, and they have that one theme and they manage to continue to interpret it throughout in ways which are like micro changes and little microcosms, but still nonetheless very intriguing as an active and a passive listen. His dynamic range, the production, as I said, is absolutely top tier, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to check it out just listening to it by itself, because you don't often get that with video games. We got track number 2, the Imperial Age combat, so we'll see how different this is. Triplets. I wasn't expecting triplets. You know, like that kind of stuff. And it's just like these points where the music goes up and then and up and then you know what I mean. It's there's rises and falls, crescendos and decrescendos in here, which would make things very dramatic. The music is writhing and pulsating in real time. It just slaps, doesn't it? I've also realized we have brass there as well now, which is kind of tremendous. I think the biggest change for me is that brass. There's the rhythm and the brass there. What I appreciate that we're trying to do here is we're trying to keep elements of like the instrument choice that we had in Castle Age Combat, where it was a bit more static and kind of fragmented and a little bit more dramatic. There's a weird playfulness and like a dance-like groove to the way that we handle things due to those triplets and the bounciness of it. Almost like we've done all the learning we need to do and we're ready for battle. That's what we're talking about. But the brass was a lot more dominant in this one. Bam, 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 bam. There's even some sort of Hindi music, kind of like rhythmically. I don't know whether how that is to come. It's just da 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 da. It kind of reminds me of music from like the kind of from India as well, with the rhythms and stuff like that. I dig it. But then these instruments kind of bring it back to the specific region, you know, without you getting too lost in it. Not bad. Not bad at all. I had a great time with that one. Yeah, I think the main comment I'd make about the Imperial Age combat, the inclusion of the brass was more bombastic, and it seemed like it was more regal and more proud of itself, as if we had reached that grand kind of height we were looking for in the Imperial Age. At a similar length to the Castle Age combat section, I think that this one was a little bit more sort of playful rhythmically. Almost like there was a bit more sophistication there, a bit more self-awareness there that we were ready to do what we needed to do. I assume these are some quite big battles when we get to the Imperial Age, if I remember correctly. It's a lot like how the Age of Empires 2 worked. I'm not surprised that they've gone back to this to kind of reimagine things from that era. It makes a lot of sense. How, I think, to be fair, Age of Empires 3 was getting into like the 1700s, and it was like the Americas and stuff like that. You were seeing people come and like settle in the United States and such. You had like people building stuff like that, So I think that going back to their roots with Age of Empires 2 was a smart move, especially considering how popular that is. I think that was the main difference. I think rhythmically, dun 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 dun. There was some similarities between the Castle and Imperial and how they phrase things rhythmically that kind of helped to tie them together, as well as the interesting instrument choice of like, we had the strings as well, but like the shamisen and the pan flutes and stuff included as well. It had a similar way of phrasing itself as well. There was a lot of the time, there was space occasionally, things went down in regards to perceived loudness, intensity of it, but there were still little things poking backwards and forwards. And again, I think that makes sense in a battle situation, because when you have a battle, you've got things being quite busy, so it makes sense as well that the theme would be like that, things going backwards and forwards and coming together and stuff. It kind of helps you align what's going on in the music with what you're seeing on the screen and what you're interacting with, and it makes it more of a kind of a collected, connected experience. I think that the composer did a tremendous job, and the performers of the music within the tracks did a phenomenal job as well. Really happy with it. But we've got the kind of director's cut of all the different themes from the Japanese, I think, in Age of Empires 4. It's an 8-minute track. Usually the time limit I have for songs in these reviews is 7, but I'm willing to allow it this time, as I think it'll kind of help us to understand the entire journey that we've had so far. So let's continue. Court of the Chrysanthemum. So just to confirm, I think when we talk about Age 1 Boom and combat, I think it's the starting point, like the first age, and we kind of setting up our pieces, and then if there's combat, that's the music for that. And then each age, each part you kind of go into has 2 different musics. And so things are very peaceful at first. Phrygian mode. And a lady as well. Not bad. And I assume this is the battle for the starting age. Is it the Dark Age? Oh, I think that was the first age in Age of Empires 2. Feudal Age. It was the Dark and then Feudal Age and then Castle and Imperial. Very spooky with the vibrato there. I mean, it's just so intense with the brass. Like, has that trombone always been there? Maybe I just wasn't as noticing it before as much. And the string flutters, man, the way they slowly rise up. So what are those little bell things there that we've got those? Is that like a cloud drum or something like that? Because I've got one of those, they're really fun. On straight into the swing theme. See, they're hesitant to have too much time without any percussion or sense of groove or movement there, but they are allowing time for things to sit still a little bit without too much line presence. I like the fact that after so much heaviness and intensity across the board for the most part, we're allowing things just to kind of sit still a little bit and return to some of the serenity that we had earlier in the piece. Fourths? It's fascinating. Like, genuinely, it's fascinating. I adore the fact that this was an 8-minute piece, and yet I was intrigued with it throughout. Granted, we had a lot of the similar instruments and textures that we had from the previous tracks incorporated within this, but I was already of the understanding that there would be some of the parts we've heard before included in this anyway, so it's totally fine. Yeah, what am I'm not going to go too much into this track here in the sense that we have a conclusion right after this, where I'll be going over my experience in general. But what I want to say is I think that it captured the essence of it well. I think that what they were trying to communicate was the court of Chrysanthemum. It's like a royal palace or something like that, right? You have the drums, you have the woodwinds, you have the little air drumish kind of tingly things, you have the strings and the shamisen and stuff, and you have the brass as well, the bwah, that lower end resonance. It just really kind of fills everything so sweetly whilst also being so immeasurably powerful. I adore the love that was put in by everyone involved. I think it does a tremendous job at communicating the aesthetic that I think people who are semi-familiar with Japanese culture will recognize. But at the same time, they understood the journey they were going on. They provided a lot of range across the track, instrumentally and compositionally, and there wasn't a note out of place. We're going to talk about this in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion, my review of these tracks from Age of Empires 4. They were the Japanese themes, first the Castle Age combat part, then for the Imperial Age combat, and then we had Court of the Chrysanthemum, which was kind of like a director's cut of all the 8 sort of types of music from the I suppose, again, the first 4 ages for combat, as well as for I suppose their traditional normal, their boom periods or whatever, For a game which is, all about trying to get from point A to point B in regards to evolution as quickly as possible in order to be able to survive, this game does a tremendous job of increasing the intensity and wonderment of the music as we go along. I assume the first part of the Court of the Chrysanthemum track is related to that. Things are kind of quiet. You have some woodwinds, some occasional plucks, bit of harp work, etc. It's mysterious. There's a little bit of lady vibrato, some vocals going on in there to kind of set a precedent there, a little bit of sort of like misty layering on top there. But things haven't really kicked off yet. And as we went through the director's cut, we went gradually with sort of more of a straight 4/4 or a sort of tempo, like a meter. We sounded like we were very kind of like we were going to confront anybody that came our way and show them the door effectively, or show them our blade. And it was ferocious. We had, again, the use of the taiko drums, I believe, as well as some hand drums there, in addition to the shimisens, the pan flutes, the other sort of like string parts there, and the brass there in the lower section. And there was a lot of power behind everything, but at the same time, these tracks featured an incredible amount of dynamic range. The reason I mentioned the straight 4/4, the kind of like dun 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 dun, that kind of stuff, is that the Imperial Age combat one got bouncy. We had a swing groove, a switch in tempo there, as if we were ready to dance now. We'd gone to that high Imperial Age, and we were now ready to try and sort of mess around with the rest of the opponents on the field there. I think switching to that groove there, it's kind of like you're really playing at that point. You're really cooking with gas there. There's I find a little bit of joy in the way we were phrasing things, almost like we were doing a dance of celebration for having achieved that point. I think in these tracks, the instruments really help relate it to the country or the region that you're playing. For example, again, having the traditional Japanese instruments. In the Imperial Age part, I think I mentioned that the dun 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 dun, that kind of groove there with the triplets and the kind of dancey parts could be attributed to parts of like Indian music and stuff like that. To then have the pan flutes and the strings come in and the woodwind and everything just kind of have a easily identifiable texture and timbre to it, to kind of go, oh, no, that's an instrument from that part of the world. Helps you bring a really competently written percussive element there, that rhythm, that groove there, combined with the other more like generalized elements, like, again, the brass and the string sections we had, as well as the vocal chants and everything like that. It helps centralize it around that region, makes it more personal. And I think that the fact that we are varying the intensities, the loudness, the activity of the tracks, both a bit more peaceful in the quiet parts, and then there are occasional leads, but we don't really give enough time for there to be like a lead solo for an instrument, for example. So I think what we're trying to accomplish here, especially in the combat parts, is that we're saying, hey, if you're in this point where you're battling with another person, we want the instruments to sound like they're battling too. So I think I really appreciate the back and forth we have going on there. The transitions in Core Chrysanthemum, whilst showing the individual ages with their different boom and combat periods, were so seamless that I actually lost track of which was what. I'm not upset about that. I think that if you can create that experience from start to finish, it was sounding like a big song, even though there are lots of different songs in the middle. You've created a phenomenal through composed piece and should be very proud of yourself. My understanding, after doing a quick Google search just to confirm it, is that Japanese traditional music is often based on the pentatonic or heptatonic 7 scales. For example, remember how I talked about the Phrygian mode, where there's like the first note of the scale and then there's like a flat second note? They also like using the harmonic minor there. So it's a way of having a sad scale, but it's also a bit spicy and exotic sounding. And that the use of scale shapes also helped sort of identify the Japanese music with the sort of the country that you're playing with, or the empire that you're playing with within this game. The pentatonic scales I think are more used because they avoid clashy notes, but I think there's lots of different Japanese scales, such as the Akebono scale, the Hirojoshi scale, and it's kind of crazy just how many musical scales there are. And I think it's worth considering, without going too much into it, there are like the Egyptian scales as well. There are certain scales where if you hear it, you instantly can recognize, hey, that's that scale. Your brain is alerted to that thing. And I think that's kind of special that they've centralized that so much. But I think that the instrumental choices were done fantastically. The rhythms, there are a wide variety of different rhythms, whether 4/4 or triplets, and I think that the mixture of eighths, but they're like an orchestra, and they clearly understand how to play the instruments. The performances are virtuosic. The compositions are absolutely flawless. For instrumental pieces to be this compelling is tremendous, because you can't always assume that the listener will just keep their attention when you don't have a story being told. But part of it is that the story is being told by the music, and part of it is also worth remembering that this is made for a video game, and often you don't want the person getting too lost in the music that they're only paying attention to that when they're doing stuff within games. So I think it's absolutely well done. There's a lot of variation within it, but you get the feeling that they're trying to pay homage to a lot of traditional Japanese music, whilst also trying to approach it to the place that they're at, as per, again, the dance celebration I mentioned with the Imperial Age, Castle Age in the game usually being a time where you are going to have people start to sort of mess with you a bit and try to send troops in and stuff to kind of cripple you before you get to the Imperial Age. So there's a bit more tension in that Castle Age theme, so it makes sense. So yeah, it's all good. The studio recording mastering, as I mentioned, is wonderful. I am really happy with how everything sounds. It sounds like a commercial, major label grade performance. Everything was captured really eloquently, from the brass to the strings, the percussion, the vocal chants. I should note there were vocals, there were choir parts, there were like shouts and stuff like that, and there was a lady with some wonderful sort of head voice vibratos and stuff. So vocals were handled tremendously well. They weren't a main sort of like focal point of it, but they were there as a layer and to kind of accent certain on beats or first beats of certain sections. And I have to show some love for that they were used as an instrument as well as a way of sort of potentially highlighting further stuff within the piece. But things were nice and wide in the stereo field. There were no resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum. Things were really well leveled. There was phenomenal dynamic range as well. And yeah, it was nice and low without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. But I mean, effectively, this is my review of these tracks from a game named Age of Empires, specifically for the Japanese Empire, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias, and go play the game, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you get to help more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.